The gateway acts as an inbox for e-incidents that can be submitted into your system from either the web portal or a custom web form. These two methods allow you to expand on your reporting by allowing individuals who are not users of Perspective to submit information into your system. Once in the gateway, someone who is a user of Perspective can then review these records and determine if they should be accepted into your system or deleted. The gateway is also a bridge between the e-incident and your Perspective incidents, and if needed, these records could be added to or updated before being accepted. There are two rights that are associated with the functionality of the gateway. These are the gateway administrator and gateway approver rights. Both of these rights grant the ability to read and edit the records that a user has access to within the gateway. We'll talk more about what differentiates these two rights in a minute, but first, let's focus on what records some users would see within the gateway. When it comes to accessing records within Perspective, at a minimum, users will be able to see the records from the workgroup that they belong to, as well as any other ones that they may have been granted access to, that are at their access level and lower. The same rules will apply to the gateway as well. Both the web portal and the custom web forms will be associated with your Perspective workgroups. When an e-incident is submitted, it is submitted by the workgroup that is associated with that portal page or web form. So for both gateway administrators and approvers, they will only see the workgroups listed in the navigation pane that they belong to or have access to. And as such, they will only be able to see the e-incidents that have been imported by just those workgroups. Now, let's look at the functionality that is provided by the gateway administrator and approver rights. These can both be enabled for one or more users, or they could be enabled separately for different users. We'll talk about this again later on. For now though, we'll continue on under the assumption that these two rights have been enabled separately amongst different users, starting with what a gateway administrator is going to see. Within the navigation pane, the gateway administrators will see the new, deleted, accepted, and rejected folders. In the viewing pane toolbar to the right, they will see Save, Edit, Assign, Delete, and Cancel buttons. Once an e-incident has been submitted, it will appear within the new folder. From here, the e-incident could be read, and if it needs to be edited or added to, you can click the Edit button and change as needed. One note to keep in the back of your mind as it pertains to editing security settings of these records, only the gateway administrator right will allow you to edit the access level field. Clicking the Assign button will then move this e-incident from the new folder into the assigned folder of an approver. A new window will open that allows the gateway administrator to add a comment or a message for that approver to see. These comments will be visible in the Reviews section near the top of the viewing pane and will be visible for all gateway administrators and approvers that can access the record. We'll see coming up shortly that these reviews are a great way to know why a record is in a certain state or what needs to be done with it. The gateway administrator also has access to the Rejected folder. This folder will contain all of the e-incidents that gateway approvers have rejected and, in essence, kicked back to the gateway administrator. E-incidents could be rejected for various reasons. It might need to be reassigned to a different approver, in which case the administrator can edit the record and change the owner workgroup. Then click the Assign button again, which will move this record to a different workgroup in the Assign folder. Or it could be that this e-incident needs to be deleted, as only the gateway administrator right has access to that delete button. Deleting an e-incident will move it from the Rejected folder into the Deleted folder. And depending on the settings configured within the workgroup's area of Perspective administration, the record will remain here either indefinitely, or it will be purged from this folder after a certain number of days. Any questions on these settings should be directed to your Perspective administrator. As long as a record still exists within that deleted folder, it can still be moved back to the Assign folder by selecting it and clicking the Assign button. But once this record has been purged from this folder, it cannot be recovered. The Accepted folder allows the gateway administrator to see which e-incidents have been accepted. There is no specific functionality within this folder other than to see what has been accepted into your Perspective system. Now, let's look at this from the perspective of the gateway approver right. As discussed earlier, gateway approvers will be able to read and edit the e-incidents that they have access to. But a difference here is that approvers will only see the assigned, pending, and accepted folders within the navigation pane, and the Save, Accept, Pending, Reject, and Cancel buttons within the viewing pane toolbar. Starting with the Assign folder, as discussed a few minutes ago, approvers will come here to access the e-incidents that they need to review. The Review section will display when the e-incident was assigned, who it was assigned by, and any messages or comments from the Gateway Administrator. Now let's take a closer look at some of the edits that can be made to an e-incident. Selecting a record and clicking the Edit button will unlock the data entry fields that can be updated by this Gateway Approver. Much like the prospective data forms, any required fields will be labeled with red text. And before an e-incident can be saved or accepted, these fields at a minimum must have data entered on them. Some of these fields will be system required and will already have data. Other fields may be required and may not yet have any data on them. Other fields may also appear as locked and cannot be edited. These are all settings that are configured by your prospective administrator. Also here, you'll see that for some person fields, an alternate field will appear beside it, as is the case with our supervisor field. From the web portal or custom web form, these fields are free text, meaning the person that's completing the form manually types the person's name in. Here, you can search your existing database for that person and select them, or if they do not exist within your system, you could quick add to create a new record for them. A similar process can be done for all involvements as well, with the linked person field, if that is a process you have identified that needs to be done here. This could, however, also be done after the record has been accepted into your prospective system. Another edit to watch out for is on the narratives form. If this e-incident has a narrative that has been entered on it, you will see that it is missing an author. This is sometimes an overlooked required field, because within Perspective, the author automatically populates with the name of the logged in user that is adding the narrative, and it's something that cannot be changed. So, before you can accept an e-incident that has a narrative, an author must be assigned. But, in order for that author to be selected, the user that is editing this must have the Edit All Narratives and Summaries right enabled, otherwise they can't edit the narrative. If an approver needs to come back to this record at a later date, it can be moved to the Pending folder by clicking the Pending button. Again, a comment should be added as to why it's pending and maybe how long it's expected to be in this state. An approver may also decide to reject an e-incident in order to send it back to the Gateway Administrator for either deletion or reassignment. Once ready though, click the Accept button to accept this e-incident as a valid incident within your prospective system. Once again, you can comment it as needed. A new prospective incident number will be assigned to this record, and the record will then become available within your prospective data forms for users with the appropriate rights to be able to access. Finally, as mentioned earlier, the Gateway Administrator and approver rights can be enabled separately for different users, as we have just seen, or they could both be enabled for one or more users. When both of these rights are enabled for a specific user, unless your process dictates otherwise, they will not need to assign or reject these e-incidents, as they will have access to go straight to the Accept, Pending, or Delete as needed.